I arrived at the field when it still smelled of damp grass and yesterday's haste. I remember that morning clearly. The sun rising over Madeira, the youth team bus winding its way down the island roads. The silence between players thick with purpose. At 11 years old, I said goodbye to home, leaving behind family, friends, and the small dreams of that island. In an interview, I later said, leaving home was the most difficult moment of my career. I left my family at 11, 12 to go to another city. That early sacrifice planted a seed of both ambition and fear. I thought the pain was worth the dream, but years later I would realize that the dream itself might force me to reconsider everything. Football was never just a game for me. On the contrary, it became the vessel through which I defined myself. If you have talent but don't work hard, you won't win anything, I told an audience once. My teenage training sessions were brutal waits before dawn drills, under rain while others slept. I embraced the pain because I believed pain meant progress, but what I didn't acknowledge was how the cost was mounting inside. The turning point came during my time at the club, where expectation wrapped around me like armor. I had succeeded the goals, the trophies, the accolades, but something inside me began to change. It was not one moment of crisis. It was a slow down of realization. I realized that the more I achieved, the more I felt the hollow echo of applause. I realized that the roar of the crowd could drown the quiet inner voice asking, why am I here? In November 2022, I revealed publicly how deep those thoughts went. I said that during the move to a new league and fresh challenges, I even considered quitting if I didn't win the major individual honor. At that moment, the pressure and the internal expectation collided. It's so easy to stay in your bubble when you're successful. I dared to come to Turin. I put myself in danger. I took this risk, which I am sure caused me to lose the Ballon d'Or. I don't regret anything, but I thought that if Messi wins the Ballon d'Or this year, 2018, I'll quit football. That stark admission shocked many, but for me it was the truth. The moment I looked at everything I had built and asked if it was worth continuing. In that season, transferring leagues, facing a new culture, new teammates, fresh expectations, I stepped off familiar ground. I believe I was stronger for it. Yet, the inner voice crept in. What if I fail? The risk was not just losing a trophy, it was losing purpose. The decision to push through was no longer just about winning it, it became redemption. But as I pushed harder, I also pushed away the parts of myself that had nothing to do with football, friendships, simplicity, the laughter of a boy at home in Madeira before the pitch was flooded with lights. There were nights when I lay awake, hearing the echoes of past goals, the chants, the flashes, but also the silence. I had spoken often of motivation, of wanting to keep going. In October 2021, I made it clear it's not what people want, it's what I want. Is when I feel that I'm not capable to run, dribble, shoot, I want to continue because I'm still motivated. But motivation can carry you only so far. After a while, it asks something back, authenticity. It asks, are you doing this for you or for what you've become? At that point, I began to ask myself if I was still playing for love or just for legacy. At our core, we all play because we love it. But the top of the mountain changes the view. The challenge that once excited me began to weigh me down. I remember the sense of emptiness after an important win. When celebrations fade and you return to the hotel room, you hear yourself breathing in the dark. The lights are off, the squad is asleep, you're alone with the cost. And in that darkness, the question came, do I want to keep this up? I remember telling myself that quitting was never an option, but that early glimpse of questioning changed everything. It didn't hit me like a thunderbolt, it arrived quietly, almost imperceptibly. The few laughs I missed, the dinners I skipped, the family time reduced to phone calls. The equation became more success equals less simplicity. And eventually I realized that if I walk away, I wouldn't be living football, I'd be living the version of me that I built while chasing it. That version had goals, records, trophies, but also walls, high walls to protect me from judgment, from the moment someone asks, "Are you human?" Because I feared the answer. I feared that if I showed vulnerability, I'd lose the invincibility that had defined me. Yet invincibility is an illusion, and the moment I accept its fragility, I knew I was at the crossroads. That morning in Madeira, the bus ride was long, the child full of hope, but that child never imagined the price. Imagine asking a boy to carry a mountain on his shoulders, to hide his tears in the sink, to wake at 5 a.m. and freeze in the gym while the sun slept, because greatness demanded it. It's no wonder that sometimes I thought about walking away, because what good is gripping the summit if you've lost the path you loved to climb it? There's a moment in every athlete's life when the body still performs, but the heart begins to hesitate. Mine came quietly, not during a loss or an injury, but after a victory. We had won again, another trophy, another medal, another celebration, cameras flashing, fans screaming, confetti falling, everything looked perfect. But in the middle of that noise, I felt nothing. It terrified me, because football was supposed to be my pulse, my reason, my fire, and yet, standing there, I felt empty. I remember going home that night and sitting in silence. The adrenaline had faded, and I was left with a question that wouldn't leave. Why am I not happy? For years, success had been the answer to every problem. Train harder, win more, lift higher. But success without emotion feels like a shadow. It looks the same but doesn't warm you. I had given everything to this game. My youth, my energy, my tears, my relationships. I thought football would always give me back more than it took. But that night, I began to doubt it. In those moments, I thought about my father. He loved the game but never got to see how far I'd come. I've said before that his death was the hardest moment of my life. He passed away in 2005, right before one of the biggest games of my career. I didn't even get to say goodbye. After that, I carried his memory everywhere, on every field, in every trophy lift. But maybe I also carried a weight that kept me from resting. Every time I scored, I looked up, hoping somehow he could see. And when the celebrations ended, that hope turned into guilt that I was still trying to prove something to someone who was already gone. People often see the glamour, the jets, the cars, the cameras. What they don't see are the lonely dinners after games, the hotel rooms that all start to feel the same, the way fame builds walls between you and the world. I used to say that being at the top means you have to stay obsessed, and it's true. But obsession isolates you. It makes every small flaw feel enormous. It makes you forget what joy used to feel like. There were days I trained so hard that I didn't feel my legs, not because I needed to, but because stopping meant thinking, and I was afraid of my own thoughts. At one point during a tough season, I started to wonder if I could still play freely, if I could still feel the same passion I had as a boy on the streets of Madeira, barefoot, kicking a torn ball under the orange glow of a streetlight. I missed that. The simplicity, the laughter, the innocence of chasing a dream without thinking of cameras or critics or contracts. That's what I meant when I once said, I'm not perfect, but I'm driven. I was driven by love once, then I became driven by expectation. There's a big difference. The world expected perfection from me every week, one missed penalty, one poor game, and the headlines would explode. People forget that behind every player, there's a person with doubts, fears, and sleepless nights. The pressure is constant, not just to win, but to never fail. That pressure started to eat away at my joy. I began to see football not as the gift it once was, but as a test, I could never finish. When I said I almost walked away, I wasn't exaggerating. I had conversations with those closest to me about it. I told them I didn't know if I could keep going. I was tired, not physically, but emotionally. Every part of my life was built around performance. Even happiness had become conditional. Win, and you deserve to smile. Lose, and you don't. That's not living, that's surviving. Then came a moment that changed me. A young fan came up to me one day, tears in his eyes, holding my jersey. He said, "You saved my life. I started working harder because of you." I looked at him and realized something simple but powerful. The game wasn't just about me anymore. My story had become a mirror for others. My battles gave someone else strength. That realization hit me harder than any goal I'd ever scored. It reminded me that walking away would not just be about leaving football. It would mean leaving behind every person who still believed in what I stood for. Discipline, faith, persistence. Those values were bigger than trophies. They were lessons I had learned the hard way, and maybe my purpose wasn't finished yet. Still, it took time to find balance again. I started to listen to my body, to rest more, to spend real time with my family. My children began to understand what I do, and seeing them smile after a match brought back a kind of happiness that records could never give me. The laughter of my son in the stands, my mother's tears after a win, those became my new trophies. Football didn't stop being hard. The training, the scrutiny, the criticism, it all remained. But my relationship with it changed. I stopped playing just to prove people wrong. I started playing again to remind myself of who I was before the fame, a boy who loved the sound of a ball hitting the net more than anything else in the world. That shift didn't happen overnight. It took years of pressure, reflection, and pain to arrive at peace. But I realized something I wish I'd known earlier. Success without gratitude feels like hunger that never ends. You keep feeding it, but it never fills you. Gratitude, though, that's the feeling that brings you home. There was a time when I thought stepping away would be a sign of weakness. The kind of word that never belonged next to my name. But life is a way of teaching you that strength isn't only in how long you endure, it's also in knowing when to breathe, when to let go, when to feel. I remember one particular evening, training had finished late and the stadium was empty. The lights were dim, the grass still warm from the floodlights. I sat alone at midfield, my boots off, staring at the goalpost. Those nets had captured thousands of my shots, each one a piece of my story. But that night, I didn't think about the goals I scored. I thought about the ones I missed. I thought about the moments when I've been too hard on myself, too cold with teammates, too distant with family. And I thought maybe I've been chasing perfection so hard that I forgot why I started running in the first place. People often say greatness requires sacrifice. That's true. But what they don't say is that sacrifice can quietly turn into loss. You start by giving up comfort, then time, then moments, until one day you realize you've given away pieces of yourself that you can't get back. I gave up nights with my family to chase early mornings at the gym. I missed celebrations to rest for the next match. I traded laughter for discipline, softness for steel. I told myself it was worth it, and most days was. But there are nights when I wish I could have paused the world just for a little while to live like everyone else. That's when the thought of walking away became real. I imagined life beyond the pitch, spending whole days with my children, watching the ocean, without thinking about training, waking up without a schedule, without pressure. It sounded like peace. But peace without purpose frightened me, because football wasn't just my career, it was my language. It's how I expressed myself, how I made sense of the world. Leaving it would be like learning to speak again, so I decided to stay. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to rediscover what football meant to me. I stopped measuring every match by goals alone. I started to value the moments, the look on a young player's face when I encourage him, the connection with fans who saw more than just a number on a shirt. Those moments brought me back to the feeling of being 11 again, playing barefoot in Madeira, dreaming under the sun. That's the heartbeat I was missing. When you've achieved everything people told you was impossible, you reach a point where you have to redefine success. It's no longer about the next trophy or the next headline. It's about legacy, the quiet impact you leave behind when the cheering fades. I wanted to show that greatness doesn't mean being unbreakable. It means being relentless, yes, but also being real. I've been through seasons where the critics shouted louder than the fans, where mistakes were magnified until they felt like failures. But I've learned something important. You only lose when you stop believing. I kept going, not because I was fearless, but because I learned to move forward despite fear. And maybe that's what people see in me now, not perfection, but persistence. Every player at some point faces that crossroads, keep climbing or let go. I stood at that line more than once, and every time I remember the boy who cried when he left home, who promised his mother he'd make her proud, who believed that football could be more than just a game. That boy is the reason I'm still here, is the reason I never truly walked away. Sometimes after win, when the crowd is gone and the locker room falls quiet, I take a deep breath and thank God I didn't quit. Because even with all the noise, the pressure and the exhaustion, these games still give me something nothing else can, the feeling of being alive. The smell of the pitch, the touch of the ball, the sound of fans believing it reminds me that everything I went through was part of a larger story. I almost walk away, yes. But maybe that moment was necessary. Maybe I needed to come close to losing football to understand how much it still means to me. Because love tested is love proven. And every time I step on that field now, I play not to silence the critics, but to honor the journey. I know I can't play forever. The day will come when my boots hang and the roar becomes a memory. But when that day arrives, I want to live knowing I gave everything, heart, body, and soul. I want people to remember not just the goals, but the fight, the resilience, the message that no matter how heavy life gets, you can always rise again. If I could speak to every young player chasing this dream, I'd tell them this: success will test you in ways failure never could. There will be days when you question if it's worth it. Don't run from those moments, they're the ones that shape you. Remember why you started, remember the love before the pressure. So yes, there was a time I almost walked away from football, but instead I chose to walk closer to myself to rediscover the joy that first brought me here. And that decision, more than any trophy, might be the most important victory of my life.